Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and we're going to be doing a custom battle here on a recreation of Helm's Deep. So this is freaking awesome. They have the whole fields in front of it, they have the deeping wall, the Hornburg, they have the causeway up until the gate, and it's really freaking cool. So to recreate this scenario, I decided to play as the Wood Elves with an empire, an army of men besides me, and we're going to be facing off against a huge orc wall with about 10,000 men total, and so you can see them just rampaging about outside. There's going to be two major attacks, one on the right up the causeway led by a spider and multiple giants. I think there's like 7 or 8 giants in the entire game, tons of trolls, tons of orc boys, and they're all going to be running up. So my main defense is going to be over on the right side, where here you can see all of my archers stationed. My defense is such that I have 2 flanks of archers up against the wall, and then this main exploded central area in the center is where all the enemies are going to be pouring through. I'm going to be firing straight into them with tons of fire up through the top, and then on the right hand side you'll notice I have a bunch of spearmen lined up, and we're going to charge into that gap and plug it. And the enemy is making a beeline for that position, and this is such a freaking epic shot. I love what all the stuff that the community has been able to put together with this custom map tool, because this looks freaking epic. The banners on the wall, the huge gateway, and the deeping helm, the deeping wall and the Hornburg, excuse me, all looking glorious. But now we get to the point where the enemy has stepped foot inside, and all of a sudden now I have my spell singer gonna cast a huge spell to clog the entirety of this front here and just stop the enemy in its tracks. I bet this is something that the men of Rohan and the elves and the dwarves and all the other people at Helm's Deep would have wished they'd had, is a little bit of magic. Yeah, Gandalf was there a little bit late, but didn't have that much to help them out. Although this is, I guess you could say that the trees, kind of like that spell there, did end up saving the day. At the end of the Battle of Helm's Deep, there is the huge forest that moves in and cleans up the rear of the retreating forces of Isengard. But nonetheless, now we are watching the penetration of the enemy forces into our lines, led at the front by trolls and giants. And a cool thing here is, with the might of the archers I have, all those units on the back right, 4 units of like 80 men, are going to tear into this giant. So just as he gets into this area, look at the machine gun levels of fire that I pour into him, and he dies within just 2-3 volleys, crushing stuff. But even in his death, he does crush some of my own troops. But his loss is not really going to be noticed for the for the greenskins here, because they are swarming like ants all around. Now we do have some mortar crews from my ally over on the right hand side. He's going to be bombarding the compact positions of the enemy, and he's actually going to sally forward to try and meet the enemy on the causeway here. A group of flagellants, great swords, spearmen, other forces trying to hold these guys at bay. There's an empire captain, a witch hunter, and other forces. There's even a grey wizard in the mix. So tons of troops sallying forward rather gloriously. Now later in the fight we will kind of retreat and pull back and fight for the main keep, but for the time being we're kind of slowly piecemeal drawing back, holding the enemy as far away as possible and just trying to get as much damage as we pin them in multiple stages, and then slowly retreating. So for instance here, this is a really nice position to be in. Obviously you can see all the enflating fire that I can put in from, well, the archer's position there on the ridge over to the top. And then kind of, if you were to look at where the camera is here, look over to the right hand side, that's where I had all my other archers before, so I can get tons of surrounding fire. There's also going to be more reinforcements pouring out of the main keep. We have a lot of free company militia moving in, and yeah, this is another shot of this enemy push through the center, and just how much fire, almost 360 degrees, is going to be destroying that central position. And so the enemy death toll is going to be freaking massive in that position. A couple of the trolls have punched through, as well as some goblins and some little lords and goblin war bosses, and so my archer units here are going to try and turn about and fire. But I have kept at least half of them facing forward, because it's one thing to kill everyone inside your keep, but I do at least want to thin the numbers outside, because they are definitely out in the open. They're pretty easy kills, so I want to basically spread the love of my arrows everywhere across the battlefield. And I really like the effects on the arrows. It does look a little bit goofy if this was a historical setting, but with the high fantasy it looks freaking cool, with the blue arrows, the red arrows, and then kind of the silent normal arrows. And also the map maker did a good job with the backdrop. All the little details, there's actually fires burning. You can see that in the back left. That is an effect. and then the surrounding cliffs and hillsides all make it look really epic. But literally this whole siege, I think it went on for like 45 minutes. I'm presenting a trimmed down version of it, but literally this was the shot of this entrance for about 30 minutes, was just constant reinforcements of orcs pouring through here with their choppas ready. Same thing was happening up on the causeway, but finally at this point, while my archers continue to fire, over here they don't necessarily have the same supporting fire. You can't put forces up on the deeping helm. Well, you sort of can, but not really up on the walls or the Hornberg. So you kind of the only place where you can position archers is behind the deeping wall, which is kind of where I have them, which means unfortunately on this point this is actually a weak area. And so that's how the spider and the troll and other units were able to push through here and start to get into the keep itself. And this is where I had some Eternal Guard trying to beat back the spider, so they heroically did so. They're going to chase them off, and all of a sudden they're going to realize, oh shit, there's another monster coming in close, and so they're going to get stomped on. Now we do have some units casting spells on the enemy, trying to beat them back. The orcs are going to pick themselves up. Man, they've been given a real beating, and their numbers on this flank are relatively thin. But nonetheless, they're still going to continue to pour through. I have a couple more Eternal Guards that I'm going to try and throw into the mix. There's also, if you look up at the giant's feet, there's a Witch Hunter and a Grey Wizard. So the Grey Wizard, they're Gandalf before he gets brought back as Gandalf the White. I guess is here in this siege as well. But the enemy also has its own fair share of spells. The Curse of the Bad Moon here getting at our infantry clusters, and the Free Company that came to reinforce is getting a lot of nice shots on, and we're actually able to force the enemy tide back. I've skipped a little bit forward to the point where they start to run out of ammo. That's how much punishment they've put on the enemy. My own Wood Elves have pulled back a little bit further to get a bit more safety away from the spells, and we're shooting into the enemy. We're going to surge back forward a little bit to try and put some more damage on, but at this point they've started to penetrate through the front lines. They've broken our great swords and Free Company that were pushed through the center, and what they're going to be having now is actually their heroes. Grimgor Ironhide is going to be punching through, and this dude also, if you were to transport him into the Lord of the Rings, man, he would be a servant of Melkor for sure. He is a beefy, tanky, killing unit. I bet he could take out Aragorn. I bet he could take out Legolas. This Grimgor is a foe to be reckoned with in Warhammer Fantasy, and I'm sure in other fantasy realms he would be the King of Kings. And now you can start to see the enemy penetrate a bit further. They're starting to crest the central hill, so I've pulled back. Haldir, fall back! This is the kind of situation we've decided to do here. I've pulled back with my Elven Lords, and so we're going to be holding here with more Eternal Guards, and I just want to get a better firing position up at the top. My Spell Singer with the Lore of Life is up on the top right, so she's kind of on Overwatch, and you'll see her cast a spell here soon. This is another really great shot with this this is sort of similar to the lore in the movie, where behind the deeping wall there's access to the keep. Now it's been made a little bit larger in this case, so the orcs are going to be able to stream through here, but not without taking punishing fire as they push through the central plaza, I guess you could call it, or the central area behind. There's an official name in the lore, but I can't remember what this area is called. But anyways, they're going to try and push through here, and it is going to literally rain missiles all on these guys. And this looks like some crazy futuristic thing with there's lasers being fired essentially, but yeah, this is an elf's wet dream. So they volunteered gladly to sell their lives at Helm's Deep to do this turkey shoot, because this is what every elf dreams of. The tide of greenskins is continuing to rise. I think at this point we've probably killed off 50% of the enemy, but still, I mean, they outnumbered us at least 2-1, so now the odds are maybe a little bit even. And take a look at the Spell Singer here. I really like the animations. Look at her arms. They're glowing green with the power, her hair glowing green, and then watch as she starts to kind of summon up magic and cast this deadly spell. So we're going to watch her kind of prepare the spell here, and then we'll pivot over to the spell being cast. She's up there on top of the cliff on Overwatch, like I was saying, and getting in at this huge blob of enemy forces that at this point most of the Orc boys have been killed, and so now we're going to be dealing with big guns, black orcs, Crimson Killers, so a bit more of the higher tier, stockier troops, and so that's why I've been trying to save up my Winds of Magic to try and beat back these guys. But nonetheless, They're going to be chopping through. I have my Azrai spears, I have War Dancers, I have other units in the mix, but they're barely holding the tide. And then here's another Orc War Boss who's been pushed through to this point. They're in amongst my archers. I've had to commit them even though, you know, it's not ideal, but they're out of ammo. What else are you going to do? Kind of reminds me of that situation in the Lord of the Rings movie, The Two Towers, when you have Aragorn leading the elves behind the deeping wall once there's that gap, and they fire away with their arrows, and then they drop their bows and charge in. I always thought that was kind of funny, but at this point, you know, I kind of had to do that. I used up all my ammo, and so now we're going to get into melee. It's a problem that we have enemy warlords still active. You saw he just popped a Wah ability, probably stand your ground as well, and that's going to give them a lot more fighting and staying power, which is why I'm now starting to retreat a bit with my archers. This outer position is super compromised, so once again we're going to have to pull back. In the foreground here you can see actually a whole group of Crimson Killers. These guys are going to be very hard to kill, super armored. It's very hard for me to get shots on with my archers, and especially I just don't have that much archer ammo left, and I don't really have any line of sight. Now I'm pulling back to the keep, and because you can't position yourself up on top of the walls, I don't really have the greatest firing arcs. So now we're going to be inside the Hornburg itself, a warlord, a war boss here trying to push forward. I'm going to try and focus fire on him, but you can see the shots that I'm getting in are really not direct with the remainder of my forces here. And this is kind of just like in the movie as well, with the enemy pushing all the way up into the keep as I try and retreat further and further back. I do have a little bit of a trick up my sleeve, and you'll see that here towards the end of the video, but oh my god, the elves are brutal. They just stabbed that guy and his arm popped off, but it still only counts as one, you should know. Pulling back a little bit further with my archer, I'm going to bring in my Glade Lord on the right, who's going to try and tango with those guys. My Spell Singer is still alive. I'm going to pull her back because she's constantly trying to pop abilities to, you know, replenish my HP and cast a lot of damage spells. So she's definitely critical to keep alive. But the enemy Wah continues to pour on through. I don't know how they still have men left. Most of it, like I said, is some pretty elite guys, but it's filling the entirety of the keep. And I think that's kind of it at this point. But I only have like 3-4 units left. The entirety of the army of men is basically done. They lost their greatswords, their state troops. They lost the witch, all their witch forces. They lost all their heroes, the captains. And it's basically just the elves holding strong here. And I think I have one of each unit. I have like an archer unit. I have a war dancer unit. I have a spell singer force. So this is not ideal to hold the line, to have some archers in the mix. Yeah, they do decent, but against Crimson Killers, yikes, that's not going to go very well. Although the war dancers are doing pretty good. They have some pretty epic spells, or sorry, pretty epic damage, and actually if you look at their animations, it's pretty cool as they dance around. I'm also going to now be unleashing my final couple volleys with my arrows, targeting of course the Black Orcs and the Crimson Killers, because those are priority number one. I have to take them out if I want to stand any chance of surviving, and it seems to be doing pretty well. A couple of those guys are going to start dropping, and it's going to start to focus fire on some of their leaders. The enemy at this point is going to start to waver and rout at every point in time. If you look at the kind of bottom right of the enemy force, finally it looks like we've seen the end of their numbers, and a couple of their units are starting to pull back. You'll notice some Orc boys starting to retreat, and hopefully that rout can become infectious. Meanwhile, my morale is pretty steadfast. That's what you get when you bring the elves. They do very well, especially when their heroes are still alive. And thank God I somehow have one unit still left with ammo, although it is not necessarily the Starfire shaft. It's the Hagbane tips, I can't remember, which isn't the best. I would have much rather had the armor piercing ones. I believe these kind of do, they slow the enemy and deteriorate morale, so it's not that great, but hell, I'll take it. And get some action shots of them firing into it, and I really like the sound effects for the arrows, and just this perspective is really cool, hearing the twang of the bows, and then the whizzing of the arrows coming past you. And now, look at the front ranks. My guys are now 3 men deep. That's how thin the ranks are. The enemy is a lot deeper, and so this is where I'm going to have to pull out that final little trick that I had up my sleeve, and that is going to be some treekin that I sent all the way around the back of the enemy force. So this is kind of like in the Lord of the Rings, where Fangorn mobilizes and starts to take out the enemy rear line. So here come the Treeves to save the day. He's actually going to look at the camera. No, turn around, go save my guys. And take a look at the Spellsinger there with some Jedi-ass looking moves, almost like Darth Vader's kill at the end of that last Star Wars movie, Rogue One, where he raises up and chokes someone. That's essentially what my Spellsinger is doing. She has some really cool effects. Look at all her action as she's dancing around, casting her spells, exploding the enemy, and this next one I believe coming up is where she kind of charges up in the air and just smashes into the enemy. That's super cool to see. But yeah, that's kind of it. This is towards the end of the battle. Now I've continue to skip because it is a very long one, but it's basically me against the Crimson Killers. Those guys have almost unbreakable morale, but with the trees, the Spellsinger's still alive, and my archers, and especially badass attacks like that, finally I think they're going to start to crack. So this was a very, very fun battle, very cinematic battle, and I very much want to thank the custom map maker himself who put this together. It was very cool, very awesome to have these different custom scenarios. Yeah, if it's from a movie, it's more cinematic and all, but you know, map makers are making way more stuff, way more inventive stuff, and so kudos to them for all their stuff they've been doing. I want to take a look at some of the final stats here to see my archers. Look how many archers I brought, ridiculous numbers. And a lot of them, almost all of them, scoring over 100 kills. One of them 236 kills, that's absurd. 180 on another one. All of them earning a lot of chevs. And then my lords getting 182. If you look on the other side, the enemy did okay. Some of the war bosses getting a fair amount of kills. The war boss with 191, Crimson Killers with 178. And a giant with 358, that's absurd, and a spider with 294, so definitely they're monsters and large units getting most of the kills, whereas the Orc boys, yeah, they were there for fodder. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed, stay tuned for more, and definitely check out my documentaries. See you in the next one, peace out.